Welcome to the Hidden Wealth Coins. Most people unknowingly spend history's greatest secrets. Ordinary-looking coins sit in pockets, drawers, and jars, hiding wealth so extreme it sounds impossible. A single mistake, a rare strike, or a forgotten detail can turn simple metal into life-changing fortune. These coins don't look powerful, but they carry stories of errors, mystery, and scarcity. If you own one, spending it blindly could mean losing millions forever. First up, most people think the 1976 Eisenhower dollar is just another big, heavy coin from the past, something people spent without a second thought. But hidden behind that bold Liberty Bell design and the dual date 1776 to 1976 is a story that few collectors talk about openly. This coin was created during America's bicentennial celebration, a moment when the entire nation wanted to freeze history into metal. Millions were made, yes, but within that massive production lies a microscopic number of examples that escaped the system in ways that were never meant to happen. Those rare survivors are not ordinary coins anymore. They are symbols of mistakes, secrecy, and timing, three things that can turn a simple dollar into something worth unimaginable money. The Eisenhower dollar itself carries a powerful historical weight. It honors President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a war hero and leader during one of the most intense periods in modern history. When the United States decided to strike a special bicentennial version, they didn't just change a date, they changed the emotional value of the coin. The Liberty Bell superimposed over the moon on the reverse wasn't accidental. It represented freedom, achievement, and America's technological dominance. Coins like this were handled quickly, rushed through production, and sometimes struck under pressure that led to errors no mint employee noticed until it was too late. What most people don't realize is that rarity is not always about how many coins were made, it's about how many survived in a specific condition. A 1976 Eisenhower dollar that looks ordinary today might have gone through something extraordinary at the mint. Certain coins were struck on the wrong planchets, some received multiple strikes, and others were created during experimental phases that were never meant to reach the public. These coins were not documented properly, and when they escaped into circulation, they became ghosts of the minting process. Their existence is whispered about among serious collectors, not shouted. Condition is where the real magic begins. A circulated bicentennial Eisenhower dollar is common, but an untouched, flawless example with unusual characteristics is a completely different creature. Coins that show mirror-like surfaces, razor-sharp details, and strange anomalies that cannot be replicated today enter a realm where price guides stop being useful. At that level, value is no longer controlled by lists or charts. It is controlled by private negotiations, elite auctions, and collectors who are willing to pay whatever it takes to own something no one else can. Some 1976 Eisenhower dollars exist that challenge logic entirely. Coins with missing elements, double designs so extreme they look unreal, or compositions that do not match official records have surfaced quietly over the decades. These are not the kinds of coins that appear in everyday coin shops. When they do appear, they often change hands privately, sometimes without public prices ever being recorded. This is where the idea of million-dollar condition is born, not from hype, but from scarcity combined with mystery. The most powerful factor behind extreme value is uncertainty. When experts cannot fully explain how a coin was made, the coin becomes legendary. Certain Eisenhower dollars from the bicentennial era exist in such a small number that even advanced collectors argue about their legitimacy. That argument itself fuels value. If only one or two confirmed examples exist, and ownership history is vague or incomplete, the coin becomes more than metal, it becomes a story. And collectors pay enormous money for stories that can never be repeated. Another overlooked detail is timing. The 1970s were a chaotic period for U.S. coin production. Changes in materials, pressure to meet demand, and evolving quality standards created perfect conditions for rare mistakes. The bicentennial program added even more pressure. When you combine patriotic urgency with industrial speed, errors are inevitable. Most were caught and destroyed. A few were not. Those few are the reason some Eisenhower dollars today are treated like artifacts rather than currency. People often ask why one coin sells for a few dollars while another similar-looking coin is treated like a treasure. The answer lies in microscopic differences invisible to untrained eyes. Weight inconsistencies, edge variations, surface textures, and strike alignment can transform value instantly. A single detail can separate a common coin from a life-changing one. This is why spending a 1976 Eisenhower dollar without understanding it first could mean losing something that cannot be replaced. Stories circulate in the collecting world about bicentennial Eisenhower dollars sitting unnoticed in collections for decades, only to be re-examined later under modern grading standards. When that happens, values can explode overnight. What was once dismissed as unusual can suddenly be recognized as unique. That moment, when recognition catches up with rarity, is when fortunes change. Not slowly, not gradually, but instantly. It's important to understand that coins worth extreme money are not advertised loudly. They don't need to be. The highest value Eisenhower dollars are often known only to a small circle of specialists. These coins don't appear on public marketplaces because public attention lowers control. Quiet ownership preserves mystery, and mystery preserves power. This is why you rarely hear confirmed stories, but you hear enough whispers to know something extraordinary exists. The 1976 Eisenhower dollar represents more than a celebration of independence. It represents a collision between history and human error. That collision is where rare coins are born. When collectors speak about coins that could change someone's fortune overnight, this is what they mean, not fantasy, but the rare moment when all the right factors exist in a single object. If you ever come across a bicentennial Eisenhower dollar, the worst thing you can do is rush to judgment. The coin may look ordinary, but history has proven again and again that appearances mean nothing in numismatics. Coins that change lives are usually ignored first. They sit quietly, waiting for the right eyes to recognize them. The idea that a single coin could carry unimaginable wealth sounds unbelievable until you understand how rarity, condition, mystery, and demand combine. When they align perfectly, price becomes irrelevant. At that level, a coin is not sold, it is transferred. And those transfers are what create legends. The 1976 Eisenhower dollar is not automatically valuable, but under the rarest circumstances, it can become something far beyond money. It becomes proof that history sometimes hides its greatest rewards in the most ordinary places. And for those who understand what to look for, that knowledge alone can be worth more than gold. Second up, most people have held a 1972 Eisenhower dollar at least once in their life without realizing it. That large, heavy coin often feels ordinary, almost boring, and many people remember it only as something that never fit well in a pocket. But behind that ordinary appearance lies one of the most misunderstood and quietly powerful coins ever produced by the United States. The 1972 Eisenhower dollar carries a story that mixes history, human error, rarity, and timing in a way that can turn a simple-looking coin into something capable of reshaping a person's entire financial future. The Eisenhower dollar was created to honor Dwight D. Eisenhower, a man whose influence shaped both war and peace. When the coin entered circulation, America was changing rapidly, and the minting process itself was under pressure. Machines were fast, demand was high, and quality control was not perfect. That environment is exactly where rare coins are born. The 1972 issue became a silent witness to this era, and within that single year, variations emerged that were never meant to leave the mint in their final form. What makes the 1972 Eisenhower dollar especially fascinating is that rarity is hidden deep within details most people never examine. To the untrained eye, all 1972 Eisenhower dollars look the same. But to experienced collectors, some of these coins are entirely different creatures. Subtle design differences, strike characteristics, and unintended variations transformed certain examples into coins that cannot be duplicated today. These differences were not planned, not advertised, and not officially celebrated, which makes them even more powerful. Condition plays a role so important that it cannot be overstated. A worn 1972 Eisenhower dollar is common, but an example preserved in exceptional, untouched condition enters a different universe of value. Coins that escaped circulation, avoided damage, and retained their original surfaces became time capsules. When such preservation combines with unusual mint characteristics, the coin stops behaving like currency and starts behaving like a historical artifact with unlimited potential. Some 1972 Eisenhower dollars exist that challenge official records entirely. Coins showing unexpected design layouts, strange relief details, or characteristics that don't match standard production expectations have quietly surfaced over the years. These are not coins that flood the market or appear in everyday collections. When they are discovered, they often disappear again just as quickly, passing into private hands where prices are discussed behind closed doors rather than in public listings. The idea of a $1 million condition does not come from exaggeration alone. It comes from scarcity meeting obsession. When a coin exists in such a limited form that only a handful of people can ever own it, value becomes emotional rather than mathematical. Collectors don't compete based on price guides at that level. They compete based on desire, pride, and the fear of never seeing another opportunity again. That emotional pressure is what drives values into territory that feels unreal to outsiders. Another factor that elevates certain 1972 Eisenhower dollars is confusion itself. When experts debate the origin or classification of a coin, interest explodes. Coins that sit in gray areas of understanding often become the most sought after because they represent unanswered questions. The unknown fuels imagination, and imagination fuels value. A coin that cannot be easily explained becomes a legend, and legends are where extreme money lives. The 1972 Eisenhower dollar also benefits from its place in American history. This was a time when the United States was redefining itself economically, politically, and socially. Coins produced during such transitions often carry unintentional importance. They become markers of change. When a coin from this period survives in extraordinary form, collectors don't just see metal, they see a frozen moment of history that can never be recreated. Many people believe that life-changing coins announce themselves loudly, but the truth is the opposite. Coins with the greatest potential often sit quietly, ignored for decades. They pass through hands without recognition, waiting for someone with the patience and knowledge to truly examine them. The 1972 Eisenhower dollar has followed this exact path, hiding in plain sight while its reputation slowly grows among those who understand its deeper significance. Stories circulate quietly within the collecting world about 1972 Eisenhower dollars that were once dismissed, only to later shock experts when re-examined. When that recognition finally happens, value can change instantly. Not gradually, not slowly, but in a single moment. That is how fortunes are made in numismatics, not through luck alone, but through delayed understanding. The danger with coins like this is underestimation. Spending a 1972 Eisenhower dollar without careful inspection is like tearing a page out of history without reading it. Most coins are ordinary, but the few that are not can never be replaced once lost. This is why experienced collectors treat every Eisenhower dollar with respect, knowing that rarity does not always announce itself clearly. At the highest level of collecting, prices are not discussed openly. Ownership of rare Eisenhower dollars often remains private because privacy protects value. When a coin becomes widely known, control disappears. Silence, mystery, and scarcity work together to create power. The most valuable coins are often the least talked about, and that silence is intentional. The belief that a single coin could change someone's fortune overnight sounds impossible until you understand how extreme rarity works. When supply drops to nearly zero and demand continues to rise, price loses meaning. At that point, a coin becomes a negotiation, not a purchase. That is the realm where the most exceptional 1972 Eisenhower dollars exist. The 1972 Eisenhower dollar is not automatically worth a fortune, but under the rarest conditions, it can become something extraordinary. It represents the idea that history sometimes hides its greatest rewards inside objects that appear ordinary. And for those who know how to look closely, that knowledge alone can be more powerful than money itself. Third up. Most people have never heard anyone talk seriously about a 1978 Eisenhower dollar, and that silence is exactly what makes this coin so dangerous to underestimate. By the time this coin was produced, the Eisenhower dollar was nearing the end of its journey in American circulation. Public interest had faded, usage had dropped, and many coins were struck without the attention or care that earlier issues received. History shows us that this is often the moment when extraordinary things slip through unnoticed, and the 1978 Eisenhower dollar exists at that precise edge between importance and neglect. The Eisenhower dollar itself was born to honor a man who shaped global history, but by 1978 the coin had become almost forgotten by everyday Americans. That lack of attention created perfect conditions for unusual outcomes. When fewer people care, fewer people look closely. Machines still strike, hands still move, but eyes stop watching carefully. This environment is where rare coins are quietly born, not through intention, but through indifference, and the 1978 issue carries that energy deeply within it. What makes the 1978 Eisenhower dollar especially fascinating is its position as one of the final echoes of a fading era. It represents the last breath of a large-sized dollar that never truly found its place in daily life. Coins struck during endings often become far more important later than coins struck during beginnings. Endings create scarcity, and scarcity is the foundation of extreme value. When a coin marks the closing chapter of a series, collectors begin to see it not as money, but as a historical full stop. Within the 1978 Eisenhower dollars that exist today, most are ordinary, worn, and easily ignored. But a microscopic number exists in conditions and forms that separate them completely from the rest. Coins that avoided circulation, escaped damage, or emerged with unusual mint characteristics entered a different destiny. When preservation meets anomaly, the result is not just rarity, it is exclusivity. And exclusivity is where value loses limits. Some 1978 Eisenhower dollars show details that feel almost unreal when examined closely. Surfaces that appear unnaturally smooth, strikes that feel sharper than expected, or characteristics that don't quite match what people believe should exist from that year have surfaced quietly over time. These coins raise questions rather than answers, and in the world of collecting, unanswered questions are priceless. When certainty disappears, imagination takes over, and imagination fuels obsession. The idea of $1 million condition does not mean every coin will reach that level. It means that under the rarest circumstances, a single example can exist so far outside the norm that comparison becomes impossible. At that level, price guides fail, common sense breaks down, and value becomes emotional. A collector who understands that they may never see another example again will not think in thousands or even hundreds of thousands. They think in terms of ownership, legacy, and power. Condition is everything, but not in the way most people think. It is not just about shininess or lack of wear. It is about originality. A 1978 Eisenhower dollar that remains exactly as it left the mint, untouched by cleaning, alteration, or time, becomes a frozen moment. If that frozen moment also carries unusual characteristics, it becomes irreplaceable. Irreplaceable objects do not follow normal rules of money. Another layer of value comes from misunderstanding. Many collectors spent years ignoring late-date Eisenhower dollars, believing the most important examples were already known. That belief allowed certain 1978 coins to hide in collections without scrutiny. When overlooked coins are finally re-examined under modern standards, their reputations can change instantly. History is full of examples where recognition arrives decades late, but when it arrives violently. The danger with the 1978 Eisenhower dollar is that it looks harmless. It doesn't scream rarity. It doesn't advertise importance. It sits quietly, heavy and plain, waiting for someone to dismiss it. That dismissal is where loss happens. Coins that change lives are rarely the ones people protect instinctively. They are the ones people assume will never matter. Stories circulate privately among advanced collectors about Eisenhower dollars that surfaced briefly, caused shock, and then vanished into silence. These stories rarely include photographs, prices, or names, because the highest-level transactions do not benefit from attention. Silence protects control. When a coin becomes too visible, its destiny changes. The most powerful coins live in shadows. The 1978 Eisenhower dollar also carries symbolic weight. It represents the end of an experiment, the closing of a chapter in American coinage. Objects tied to endings often become emotional anchors for collectors because they cannot be continued. There will never be another original Eisenhower dollar series. That finality adds gravity, and gravity adds value. The belief that a single coin could change someone's fortune overnight feels impossible until you understand how extreme scarcity works. When supply approaches zero and demand comes from people who already have money, price becomes irrelevant. At that level, a coin is not purchased, it is claimed. And once claimed, it rarely returns to the open world. Spending a 1978 Eisenhower dollar without understanding it first is a risk many people take without realizing it. Most will lose nothing. A very small number may lose everything they never knew they had. This is the cruel beauty of numismatics. Knowledge arrives unevenly, and reward follows those who wait, study, and look twice. The 1978 Eisenhower dollar is not automatically a treasure, but under the rarest conditions, it can become something far beyond money. It becomes proof that history hides its greatest rewards inside the most underestimated objects. And for the person who recognizes that truth at the right moment, the impact can be life-changing. Fourth up. Most people never realize that the 1971 Eisenhower dollar is not just another old American coin, but the beginning of something much larger and far more complicated. This was the very first year the Eisenhower dollar entered circulation, and first-year coins often carry hidden significance that only becomes clear decades later. When a coin series begins, experiments happen quietly, machines are adjusted, and human decisions leave invisible fingerprints behind. Those fingerprints are where rare destiny is born, and the 1971 Eisenhower dollar carries more of them than most people ever imagine. The United States introduced the Eisenhower dollar to honor a man whose influence reshaped the modern world, and the pressure to get it right was enormous. New designs, new expectations, and massive production targets collided at the mint. Whenever that happens, perfection becomes impossible. Coins were struck fast, inspected quickly, and released into circulation before anyone truly understood what variations might exist. Some of those early coins were never meant to exist exactly as they do today, and that accidental existence is what makes them powerful. What separates certain 1971 Eisenhower dollars from ordinary ones is not something obvious at first glance. To most people, they look identical, heavy, plain, and unremarkable. But hidden within a very small number are differences so subtle that they escaped attention for years. These differences were born from early production adjustments, slight design changes, and mechanical inconsistencies that were corrected later. That means some 1971 coins represent a moment in time that was never repeated again. Condition plays a role that goes far beyond surface beauty. A 1971 Eisenhower dollar that survived without heavy circulation, without cleaning, and without damage becomes a rare witness to history. When such preservation combines with unusual characteristics from early production, the coin crosses a line where normal pricing logic stops working. At that level, the coin is no longer compared to others. It stands alone, and when something stands alone, its value becomes whatever someone is willing to sacrifice to own it. There are 1971 Eisenhower dollars that raise questions even among experienced collectors. Coins with unexpected surface textures, unusual depth in design, or characteristics that don't align perfectly with later issues have surfaced quietly over the years. These coins don't shout for attention. They whisper. And in the world of serious collecting, whispers travel farther than noise. When uncertainty surrounds a coin, desire grows stronger rather than weaker. The idea of a $1 million condition does not mean every 1971 Eisenhower dollar holds that potential. It means that under extremely rare circumstances, one example can exist so far outside the norm that it becomes untouchable by ordinary standards. At that point, value is no longer controlled by charts or price guides. It is controlled by competition, scarcity, and fear of loss. A collector who knows they may never encounter another example again does not think rationally, they think urgently. Another powerful factor behind extreme value is misunderstanding. For years, many collectors focused their attention elsewhere, assuming the earliest Eisenhower dollars had already been fully explored. That assumption allowed certain 1971 coins to remain overlooked, sitting quietly in collections or storage. History has shown again and again that overlooked objects often deliver the greatest shocks when rediscovered. Recognition does not arrive gently, it arrives suddenly. The danger with the 1971 Eisenhower dollar is that it feels familiar. Familiarity creates carelessness. People assume that if a coin looks common, it must be common. But numismatics does not reward assumptions. It rewards patience and curiosity. Some of the most valuable coins ever discovered were spent, ignored, or nearly lost because someone believed they already knew what they were holding. There are stories passed quietly among advanced collectors about early Eisenhower dollars that briefly appeared, stunned experts, and then disappeared into private ownership. These stories rarely include public prices or photographs, because visibility reduces control. At the highest levels, coins are not sold openly, they are transferred discreetly. That secrecy itself becomes part of the value. The 1971 Eisenhower dollar also holds symbolic power as the beginning of a series. Beginnings matter. They mark experimentation, ambition, and uncertainty. Coins struck during beginnings often contain features that never return once systems are refined. That makes them historical snapshots rather than routine products. When such snapshots survive in exceptional condition, they become anchors of an entire era. The belief that a single coin could change someone's fortune overnight sounds impossible to most people, yet history proves it happens when rarity and recognition collide. When supply shrinks to almost nothing and demand comes from collectors who already possess wealth, money stops behaving normally. At that level, the coin dictates the terms, not the buyer. Spending a 1971 Eisenhower dollar without examining it closely is a gamble most people don't realize they are taking. For many, nothing is lost. But for a very small number, something extraordinary could disappear forever. This is the quiet risk that exists every time history passes through careless hands. The true power of the 1971 Eisenhower dollar lies in its ability to hide significance behind simplicity. It does not look like treasure. It looks like metal. And that is exactly why it survives unnoticed. Coins that announce their importance rarely stay affordable. Coins that hide it sometimes rewrite lives. The 1971 Eisenhower dollar is not automatically worth a fortune, but under the rarest conditions, it can become something far beyond money. It becomes proof that history rewards those who look twice, think deeply, and refuse to underestimate the ordinary. And for the person who recognizes that truth at the right moment, the impact can feel like destiny.